But then what happens if you're just really vanilla?
I don't know.
You know, yeah. You're like, no, I got no answer for you. Yeah. Cindy, sex therapist.
But what does vanilla mean? You might be vanilla for a period of time. But I don't think it's a constant thing. And I don't necessarily think that vanilla is bad. Vanilla's fine. Allow yourself to also put topping on it sometimes.
Excellent. So what kind of, Jackie, especially, you know, from your work with the Sex Workers Outreach Project, what kind of issues do you hear about in the queer and lesbian like health space?
I guess in terms of sex workers, one of the things is fitting into our community. So what our community thinks of a person who's worked, who's done sex for pay. How do I disclose? Should I disclose? What will my community think of me? Will my partner look at me as if I have STIs? You know, am I not a gold star lesbian because I slept with men?
Bisexuals, Cindy. What's your experience with that, with bisexuals and in the gay community, and how that sits on the spectrum of sexuality?
In terms of my clients and how do they
do
they cope with
accepting
being bisexual?
and moving? Like, see, for me, I don't give a shit what you do. It doesn't make any difference to me.
Again, I mean, I think it comes down to shame and stigma. And historically, if we go back in the history of the gay community, it wasn't that long ago when the gay community was riddled with shame and stigma. And to a degree, I mean, it's certainly improved, but there's still a long way to go. And the bisexual community, and you know, in the last 20 years, there's been more of a movement forward with the bisexual community that has now morphed into the queer community, and now the trans community are making a much stronger presence as well. Sexuality is evolving, so it really is about undoing the notion that heterosexuality is normal and everything else is other. Historically, we understand that even the concept of heterosexuality was really only invented about 120 years ago. Before that, people were certainly in heterosexual partnerships, but it didn't necessarily have a name. It was just, you know, because marriage was about land ownership and getting by and just functioning. It was around money, and where you got your meat was not necessarily where you got your bread back in the old days. And I think harking back to that time might have some benefits, but onward and upward. People are starting to redefine what sexuality is, and a lot more folk are referring to themselves as fluid, and the first panel talked about that as well. And, you know, there are still some people who are like, I'm straight, and that's how it is, and I'm gay, and that's how it is. But increasingly, I'm seeing more and more people going, I'm just checking it out. I might be, you know, leaning one way or another way more heavily than another. But increasingly, I am seeing folks kind of doing the self-inquiry and going, meh, if the right situation presented itself, I might go there, whatever go there means for them.
At Hellfire, we call it half an E, full E. Half an E for a woman, full E for a man.
Half an E.
Again.
That's the difference between straight and bi.
People say women have to fall in love in order to have fulfilling sex, and I think that's bullshit. And I think we're kind of held to this standard that you have to be in a relationship and you have to do all those things, and that's what...
I think ideally there has to be some kind of reverence for the sex to be good, even if it's a one-night stand, even if you just met the person 5 minutes ago. I think reverence is a good thing.
I think hot's good.
Hot's good.
Finding
hot's good
someone
too.
The
hot,
E or the half an
feeling
E
some
was good too.
Friction. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't have to like them or their politics in that first instant. I just need to feel something that makes me feel inspired to interact with them.
Is that what you mean as reverence, Cindy?
Yeah, I mean, to be able to see them as a
Just getting our language correct.
yeah, and that's the thing. But it is, you know, one person's interpretation of hot. You know, we can say hot, we can say reverence, we can say whatever we want. And again, it comes down to that self-inquiry of what are your conditions? For some people, the conditions for good sex mean clean sheets. For another person, doing it in the toilet is sexy.
And that's sexy too.
Yeah, and that's not to say that one is more sexy than another,
Correct.
but that's about the self-inquiry. What are your conditions? If your conditions are a warm room and clean sheets, that's okay. If you want to get fisted in the toilet, Steph, I get the champagne. We had a competition about who could say fisting first.
Yeah.
Sorry, darling.
Did you have a time? Does that mean you win? I love it.
If you want to get fisted in the toilet, that's fine.
I want to talk about pornography, women in pornography. Because I had somebody say to me the other day, what kind of lesbian pornography do you like? And I was like, I don't know about that. Because I just like porn. Yeah. I didn't know I had to put it in a box, which kind of harkens back to what we were saying in the thing about everything having to be defined. What role does pornography play in sex therapy and at Hellfire and your experience, Jackie?
I wrote for Picture and People for a while. The stories that apparently the people that did them, well, they're all my stories and my friends' stories. In fact, anyone who told me anything about sex, sorry.
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, we really need to be agents, and we need to have stories that sexually tell all people what kind of fantasies women have.
Cindy, pornography and sex therapy and just sex in general.
Some of the clients that I have, often heterosexual couples, the woman, and this is a generalization, but I do see a bit of this, the woman will come and be deeply upset because she found out her husband, boyfriend, whatever, is watching porn. First thing I ask them is, what kind of porn are they watching? And often the woman doesn't know. And then I say, so what are you worried about? What is it? Tell me what it is that you're most concerned about. And that will take an hour, because often they don't know what they're worried about. There's something, they're feeling something, and I'm not dismissing that there's a feeling there. There's a feeling there, but they don't know what it is. Oftentimes it is the sense that they are not good enough. They compare themselves to whatever they imagine it is that the fella's watching. In a lesbian context, in a queer context, I often prescribe porn as a how-to. Generally not kind of the mainstream hetero stuff. I will refer them to things like Crash Pad and the work of Tristan Taormino and various other kind of fab gals and folk who are making fabulous, intelligent, instructional porn, Buck Angel, folks like that. So I use it as a prescription as well. It has its place. I'm certainly not anti-porn. I'm very much a pro-porn feminist. I think there's some shit porn around, and I think there's some amazing porn around. Shop around is what I tell people.
Jackie?
Remember too that porn is in the realm of fantasy. Just because somebody's looking at a particular kind of porn does not mean they want to do that act. You're allowed to have a really wide palette of fantasies. You can fantasize about non-consent. You can fantasize about anything you want. What you need to think about is whether you adopt it into your own sexual practice.
Excellent. So, speaking of adopting into our own sexual practice, let's hit the microphones.
My question is, as a sex therapist, do you see there's a decline in people taking their spirituality or taking their wholeness into sex and therefore affecting sex in a bad way? Sorry.
In sex therapy, not so much, because people are paying good money to come and talk to me, and those people are generally not looking for cheap thrills. If they're going to invest that much time and money into coming to therapy, so in my work, not so much. But I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, that McDonald's sex that we get fed, yeah, it's not good. But there are alternatives, and just because the mainstream feeds us McDonald's, it's our job to find out what else is available. And if spirituality is something that floats your boat, then if I have clients that start talking and using spiritual language, I go there with them. I'm like, yep, let's go there. If I have clients who are just like, I'm not into that, that Tantra stuff, I'll still teach them Tantra, but I'll call it something else.